Are you considering a career in management consulting? Or do you perhaps know a management consultant and are wondering what exactly they do? Companies pay millions of dollars to management consulting companies, and consultants are very well paid, making jobs in consulting highly sought after. But it's really difficult to explain what consultants actually do. I spent almost 10 years at McKinsey and Company, and my family still don't know what I actually did for a living. The cliche answer is we help CEOs solve their most pressing problems. But still, what does that mean? The one thing that is accurate is that consultants are problem solvers, but no two consultants do the same work or even solve the same problems during their time in consulting. I am Ramona Moodley, a former McKinsey consultant turned executive coach, and I'm going to share an overview of 3 of my favorite consulting projects and how I specifically contributed to the solution we proposed to our client. You will get a glimpse into the specifics of the job, and you can come to your own conclusion of what consultants actually do. I'm going to disguise some of the details of what I share to preserve client confidentiality. The first client was a national grocery store looking to optimize the location and size of their stores. They wanted to close stores that didn't have good growth prospects, open new stores in high potential areas, and right size all existing stores so they weren't paying excessive rent on unused space. For this project, I was responsible for building the model that showed which stores should be closed and right-sized. I interviewed many experts on retail space sizing to influence the variables I put into the model. I then looped in a McKinsey geospatial expert to characterize each existing store by growth potential based on factors like number of competitors nearby, household income of neighborhoods, and things like that. I also evaluated the size of each store versus its profitability to gauge which stores should be downsized or closed altogether. After the model was ready, I traveled around the country meeting with the regional store managers to calibrate the model and to syndicate the recommendations of the model. I relied heavily on Excel modeling skills here. I came into consulting having never used Excel in my life, but used Excel on 90% of my projects while at McKinsey in some way. I made a lot of PowerPoint slides on this one. Actually, on all my projects. The cliche about consultants making a lot of PowerPoint slides is true. And PowerPoint skills are one of the first skills we need to master as consultants. It's also very common feedback for consultants to get in their first and even second performance review that they need to work on their PowerPoint skills. If you want to get ahead of these core skills, subscribe to my channel and check out the resources in the description. I love this engagement because it was such an interesting and intuitive problem to solve. I shopped at this grocery store chain all the time, so this felt so real to me. Next up was a client who underwent a merger. We were asked by the head of the research and development department to help determine the new processes and ways of working for this combined research team. Basically, both individual departments had their own way of doing things prior to the merger, and we had to codify the best systems and processes for the combined department going forward. For this, I had to interview the heads of the teams and build a process map of who did what prior to the merger. I then had to compare the maps of the separate teams and find similarities and differences. The similarities were easy and would just become part of the new merged way of working. The differences would need to be ironed out. To do this, I set up a series of workshops with the relevant decision makers to discuss, debate, and come to agreement on how to proceed. I then codified the new combined processes and systems. This whole thing might sound simple, but it was not. During the interviews, I had to know what questions to ask and then to make sense of all the unstructured explanations and answers that were coming my way. I also had to be very strong at stakeholder management here. Many people had their own motivations and interests at stake, and I had to be sensitive to all that. During the workshops, I had to facilitate very opinionated groups of people while keeping everyone on track to get to the objective. Some of these workshops were very heated, and I had to play this mediator role really often. I enjoyed this engagement most because it played to my strengths of comfort with ambiguity and working with people. At McKinsey, we call this having strong client hands. Lastly, the client was a telecommunications company with a network of equipment all around the state that needed to be replaced. Their current process of replacing outdated equipment was inefficient and somewhat random. Technicians would replace an equipment box, we'll call it, and just a few days later come out and replace a different box that was close to the first location, when instead they could have done them both on the same visit. I had to come up with a long-term schedule to replace the whole network in a more cost-effective way. I started by interviewing the technicians to understand how they get assigned the work and what the replacement process was. I then visited a few jobs in progress to see how the replacements were done. I was interested in identifying the different types of replacements and what could and could not be bundled together. Basically, I found 3 types of replacements that differed in difficulty and duration to perform. Each type could only be performed by certain teams, so not all boxes could be combined in the same bundle for replacement at the same time. After this, I built a model that showed the whole network of boxes to be replaced, all bundled in an efficient way for technical teams to tackle multiple replacements at the same time. All the bundles were then put into a master schedule based on the capacity of each technical team. Other than PowerPoint and Excel, for this one I also relied on my technical knowledge. I have a degree in electrical engineering, and this was one of very few projects that I did actually use my expertise somewhat. So this was only a snippet of all the work I did during my time at McKinsey. But you can see how different each engagement was and how different each problem was. I love that I got the chance to solve so many different problems and learn so much so quickly. I hope this video helped you understand what consultants actually do. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And if you're interested in consulting, check out my playlist on consulting interview prep. See you in the next video.